Welcome to It's Beyond the Food podcast, my sisters. I'm your host, Stephanie Dodier, and today is a Coach Corner episode, and we're going to go deep on a question that I hear more than almost any other from health professional I work with, which is, why does my client hit a, quote, wall in body image healing? And more importantly, what are you missing when that happens? Now, before we dive in, I want to remind you that the Coach Corner Vault is your on-demand library of coaching from me, answering questions that I have received, sharing some framework and real clinical scenario. And you can find it either in the show notes of this podcast or right below this YouTube video, or at stephaniedodzier.com/Coach Corner Vault. And it's free. Ready? Let's dive in. And here's the question that I have received, which, by the way, if you want to submit a question, you can send us an email at info@stephaniedodzier.com, or you can DM me a question in its entirety, and I will use it for an upcoming Coach Corner episode. Okay, let's do this. I'm working with a client on body image right now. She first came to me to help her with intuitive eating, as she had read the book and started on the workbook on her own, but was struggling with bouts of binge and restraint cycle. I was quickly able to determine why the pendulum was swinging so hard for her. I'm going to pause here. Pendulum is a term we use for certified intuitive eating counselor. So if you're not familiar with that, the pendulum is the swinging between restrained eating behavior to, quote, out of control eating behavior, binge, overeating behavior, like that big differential in behavior from one end to the other. So that's what we call the pendulum in intuitive eating. So back to the question, I was quickly able to determine why the pendulum was swinging so hard for her, aka the mental restriction. So we work on seeing the mental restriction, which was primarily due to her still attaching to the concept of healthy and unhealthy food. We've been working on titration on the fear food, the quote, unhealthy food, and it was working well until she started to gain back the weight she had lost on her last diet. I used your body image assessment and it came back as body hatred. I wasn't surprised, so we integrated body image work in our session flow, example like the mirror exercise, reframing on different body part purposes, etc. But once again, we seem to have, quote, hit a wall in her healing, as her attachment to her weight seems to get in the way. It's been 6 weeks of weekly appointment, and she is still terrorized by the thought of being in her, quote, larger body. What am I missing? So first thing, I want for all of you who are listening to this podcast to connect to a relationship with a client and perhaps even your own journey, and see yourself in that very thoughtful question and where you are at in the different stage of what this client is presenting, or where your client fit into here. That's the first thing. I want us to take a deep breath and just appreciate the level of detail in that question that allows me, or will allow me in the next few minutes, to go very deeply in my teaching, so that you can see where you first can learn from. And sometimes, and for some of you, it may be in the question itself. Like, you don't need to go further. In the question itself, you see the various processes and stages that this, I will call her a certified intuitive eating counselor, has used with her client, and you can learn only from that. But if you are at the stage where you're stuck, where she is stuck and wondering, what am I missing? Go with me on this ride. The first thing I want to say is nothing has gone wrong. For you, professional, nothing has gone wrong, because it is something you need to hear. Nothing has gone wrong here. What you are describing is not a sign that you're missing something. It's not a sign that you did something wrong or that your client is, quote, beyond help. It's actually a sign that you've been doing the right thing because you have taken her far enough in the work so that the next layer is now visible. So that resistance you are describing as hitting is not a wall. It's the threshold. It's your client maximum growth has occurred. And the work you were doing for her, an example with the mental restriction, the growth that she could get from understanding that, recognizing that, seeing that in herself, and moving past that, that growth is now stagnation. Because now it's the next layer. So she has edged her growth because we are at the next level of the belief system that was holding her eating behavior in place. And now the body image belief system beneath it is exposed and is the layer that we need to work on. Now, there is a coaching concept that I teach that's called the model behind the model. And I want to explain it to all of you that are listening here. And I think that's the title of the podcast episode, in fact, that I gave it. So what is the model behind the model? It's a coaching tool that asks, what is driving the behavior model that I'm seeing in front of me right now? Here's how it works in practice and how, in fact, you've already been using it once with this client, even though you did not name it in that way. So you're already using the model behind the model, you just didn't have a name for it. And the solution to your client's stagnation is continuing with the model behind the model. So she first came to you and you saw the primary behavior of binge restrict cycle. You saw it and you didn't let it be the problem. You went behind that behavior to find the thoughts and the feelings that were driving the quote binge and restrict cycle behavior. And through your assessment, you determined that it was mental restriction. Right? She was still thinking in terms of healthy and unhealthy food and mentally restricting the unhealthy food, not physically, but likely through self-critical thinking when she had the quote unhealthy food. So you found the model behind the binge restrict cycle, right? The thought could have been something like, I should only desire healthy food by now. Something is wrong with me for still wanting the quote unhealthy food. Maybe intuitive eating is not for me. Now, I'm saying these thoughts not because you put them in your question, but just to further enrich my answer. And I'm using my lived experience as a professional of 10 years, coaching intuitive eating, and through my interaction with clients, finding these thoughts. I would say these three thoughts are extremely common in women in food, behavior of binge restraint cycle at this stage of mental restriction. So I'm just injecting my own lived experience in your question to help illustrate my coaching concept called model behind the model. But you did that and you found her specific thought, that layer deeper, and you help her see that. You help her see the unhealthy, healthy framework, and you helped her name it likely as wellness culture. So you connected it to socialization. You helped her detach from healthy and unhealthy food, likely through explaining her the concept of socialization and how these thoughts are not fact, but actually socialized thoughts to uphold the system called wellness culture, which makes billions and billions of dollars a year by categorizing food as healthy and unhealthy, and capitalism injecting product behind it that you should be eating instead of these foods, right? The whole wellness culture. You helped her see through the socialized narrative that created those binge restrict cycle behavior. This is the model behind the model. You did it once. Now you need to do it again at the level of body image. You are at the next layer and you need to keep digging. What you're seeing now is a new behavioral presentation where she is monitoring her body. She's afraid of weight gain and possibly still struggling with food, but this time it's not about the food. It's the next model behind the model. What was fueling her desire to buy into wellness culture, to then categorize food as healthy and unhealthy food? It's most of the time not about the food, it's beyond the food, and it's about her ability to control her body. And the body image assessment confirmed that for you. She's in a stage of relationship with her body that's called body hatred. By the way, if you're listening to this and you're like, what assessment is she talking about? Great question. If you go to the show notes, again, of this podcast, I have a free assessment tool that I created called the Non-Diet Coaching Assessment Tool, which is a tool we give to all of our students inside the Non-Diet Coaching certification, and I made it free for all of you. And it has a 3-part assessment that all the clients that are engaging in a relationship with you of health behavior, nutrition, fitness should be evaluated upon so you can determine the model behind the model. So it's free, you guys can go get it. So you did the right thing by integrating body image tool because, right, the reason why she has a distorted relationship with food is because she wants to control her body. And you're helping her with that with mirror work and reframing body part by function, which is fundamental of body neutrality. But here's what is missing now. You've not yet found the model behind the body image presentation, right? The body image behavioral presentation. What is driving that? The question is not how do I help her accept the body? The question is, why does she believe her body needs to be different than it is now? And that's a question you need to ask your client. And it's likely a question she's never asked herself because most women are not, I'm hesitating and using the word educated, but they're not aware of the socialization layer that drives their relationship to their body. But this is where you, as the professional, need to lead her into so that we have a permanent, sustainable behavior change model. Now, what you will likely find when you start asking why she believes her body needs to be smaller, you will find thought like these. This is my projection from my clinical experience. I should be able to control my body. Being in a, quote, normal body is what health requires. Women in larger body are seen as lazy, undisciplined, undesirable, and I don't want to be perceived like that. I will not be loved. I will not be partnered. I will not be respected if I am in this body. Smaller bodied people are morally more valuable. And I don't want to be seen or perceived as less valuable. These are the common thoughts we see at that level. And I want to comment on the, quote, normal body size. This is a very frequent change of language that I have observed in my clinical practice, where when we address the first model about health and body size, people, women particularly, recognize that they no longer want to be thin, right? They recognize the whole social conditioning behind that, patriarchy and so forth. Now, they will shift the language from thin to, quote, normal. Now, this is a great coaching question. What does that mean, quote, normal body? Help me understand your definition of normal body, and that's going to impact more. So I'm just giving that as a bonus advice for where you need to go with your client. Now, what's important for her to understand is that these thoughts are not hers, right? That people in larger body are seen as morally inferior, lazy, and so forth. This is something she was taught, right? So she was taught that through family upbringing, friends, media, medicine, even a romantic relationship, professional environment. That's the work you need to do with her. Help her identify where she learned that. Where did she learn that people in larger body are not seen as valuable? Right? The journey of her tracing back these learning is how she is going to start detaching herself from that. The process of investigation, we use mostly Socratic questioning method. The process of investigation, however tool you're using in your practice, is how we start separating ourselves from our current belief. That work of journaling, writing down, thinking about it is how people start letting go of their old belief. Now, finding our own journey, finding our own individual thought, that is the root. That is the root cause of why she's struggling with her body, why she used food to shrink her body, which led her to have distorted eating behavior, which is why she was restricting and binging, and why she picked up the intuitive eating book, and now how she ended up with you. You see the layers? That's called the 6th layer of why in my world. That's how I teach it. So another coaching tool for you today, the 6th layer of why, is the tool, and the simplest way for you to understand this is that we keep asking why to discover the root cause, and we keep asking why in 6 layers. We keep asking why, which allow us to go deeper until the root cause becomes clearer, which is what allows a long-term sustainable behavior change. Now, what is the end of the 6 layers? In my world, is when we get to the systemic issue, is when we move our client from thinking, only seeing their thoughts, right? Something is wrong with me because I can't control my food. People will think I'm lazy because my body is gaining weight. And we get to the socialized systemic, where thinner body are the body that are being shown in media, and that these are the body that are, or people that are not in larger and thinner body are the body that are being criticized on social media. Like, we get where we move the problem from being theirs, us, our thought, to systemic socialized thinking and belief system. That's the end of the 6th layer of why. That's when we get to that place, we can stop asking why. But until we get there, we keep asking why, so we can take our client in the journey to see that it's not their thoughts, it's their thought that they were socialized to think. And you need to get to that last layer, right? The systemic power system, socialized layer, so that we can change the belief system, because that's where the belief system come from. And that's when the behavior change became sustainable and lasting long term. Now, when I started the podcast and I say it's totally normal to feel stuck, is because for most health professionals, we weren't taught the model behind the model, the 6th layer of why. That wasn't part of our training anywhere, right? Unless you're a psychologist or a therapist, you're listening to this, you're like, yep, I know all those things. Most of us weren't taught that. We were just taught to work at the primary level of the behavior and give discipline tool and quick fix and band-aid tool in hope that the behavior will stick permanently. And we know the result of that, and that's why we're here listening to a podcast titled Beyond the Food, because we know that doesn't work. And when we know something doesn't work, we look for something else. That's the 6th layer of why. The model behind the model is the answer. So it's totally normal that you are feeling perhaps less confident, you're hesitating, you just need to continue. And yes, what you're going to find at that layer has very little to do with nutrition, has very little to do with food, has to do with body image, it has to do with system of power, has to do with patriarchy, it has to do with being a woman. And yeah, these are more life coaching questions that they are nutritional, intuitive eating, health type of question. And most health professionals are not trained to coach at that level. So I think this is why you're thinking like something is missing, I'm doing something wrong. For me, you're not doing anything wrong, you're in the right path, you just feel uncomfortable and lack the confidence. And I'm here to cheer you on, so you're doing exactly what needs to be done. Keep on going so that you can deliver your client permanent, sustainable change. And this is what exactly we train professional to work on in the non-diet coaching certification or in groundwork, where we start doing the work at your level individually, personally, and then in the non-diet coaching certification, we shift to work with other human beings. So if you find yourself hitting that quote wall, that resistance with client, and you feel that it's beyond the food, it's a good sign. Everything is going well. You just need to build up your confidence and or acquire tool to help you query at the next level of the why, so you can find the next belief system that's causing your client to be stuck in a behavioral model that they don't want to have. So if today's episode gave you some tips, some confidence, I'm glad it did. I want you to know that this is what we do, and I would love to work with you either in groundwork or the non-diet coaching certification. You can come to my website, stephaniedodier.com, or use the link in the show note, and I would love to see you in my world. I love you, my sister, and I'll see you in the next podcast episode. If this resonates with you, the next step is the groundwork, my Beyond the Food foundational program for health professionals ready to go beyond the food and rethink how they approach nutrition, eating, and health behavior, starting with themselves. You can go to www.stephaniedodier.com/groundwork and join us now.